I've met people who say that honesty is destructive. Should you bring truth out in dynamics where it perhaps hasn't been seen before? There's an element of timing. You can't lay it all out on a plate.
On the second date. You told me you'd been divorced on our second date. I think that's a good example, actually, because I wasn't happy about it.
Is honesty even possible? It depends on how well you know yourself, and that's a moving target, really.
Probably most people would say they know themselves and are honest, but really, how honest are you? How in touch with your intuition and your inner guidance and your purpose and your inner voice are you?
Welcome to Becoming Untriggered, a podcast brought to you by psychodynamic coaches and parents of three, Lavinia Brown and Andrew Lynn.
Together we normalise and unpack common challenges faced by couples and parents, explore how these could be symptoms of unprocessed trauma, and support you with the tried and tested tools for you to show up as the mum or dad, partner, and person you deserve to be.
Welcome to Becoming Untriggered podcast. Today we're talking about truth, honesty. How important is that in a relationship, either with your romantic partner, with your children, and also with regards to how you show up in your life? Are you being the same person at work as you are with your partner, as you are with your kids? And do your kids need to know about your past? Is it important to be truthful about who you were as opposed to who you are now? That's what we're going to explore.
Yeah, in general, I think that nothing bad can come from the truth, especially in how you turn up in the world and in relationships. But I do think it's a grey area with children. I do think, especially when children are young, their safety is more important than the truth.
Then you're talking about the difference between being honest about what's going on in the world, right? And being truthful about your feelings, your needs, your wants. They're slightly different.
Yeah, no, I think that when it comes to children, then safety is more important than the truth, no matter what it is. But I do think that changes as the children get older. We're in a position where our children are getting older, and I think now what we're seeing with our relationship with them is that the truth is really important.
I think you have to kind of define truth. As you know, I'm a big... I think I'm incapable of not being honest. That's my problem. So I say it's what I want to be aligned with as a value, but actually I don't think I can be anything else. And that causes problems because it can come across as being insensitive, tactless, brutal, direct, and people don't always like that. But I think with children, I disagree. Maybe there are degrees of truthfulness, but I really encourage my clients, for example, when they're feeling overwhelmed or they know they're going to be angry, to actually say that out loud in front of the kids. Because what are you role modeling? You're role modeling that mummy has big feelings. And I encourage them to say, I'm feeling a bit anxious. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. I don't want to turn into scary mummy or bad mummy or shouty mummy. Obviously, it depends on the age of the children you're talking to. But then they say, so I'm going to step outside. I'm just going to calm down or whatever it is. Or we're going to put on some calming music. So I really encourage them to be as authentic as they can be about their process towards becoming a more present, calm parent, because saying it out loud, not only, as I said, role models to the children that you are showing how you're detecting a big feeling coming up, you're then releasing it, but not on them. You're taking the time out not to project that feeling onto them, but to release it consciously. And then you're coming back and that big feeling's gone. So I think that's a good thing.
I completely agree with you. I mean, being honest about how you feel rather than projecting it onto somebody is always a good thing. And that's what you need to do when you're in the middle of a process. That will make children feel safer than projecting that emotion onto them. So that's the safest option in that point of time.
Right, so you're saying maybe that safety overrules honesty.
Yes.
With children.
Yeah, always, because that's one of the basic needs. We know that if you don't have safety in childhood, you get trauma, you get repressed fear, you get repressed overwhelm. You're protecting a child from a traumatic emotion in that instance.
Yes, you see, that's where I interpret safety slightly differently to you. I would rather the children heard the truth, inverted commas, about what's going on the world stage, because no one knows what it is. There's so much propaganda, there's so much deception, double deception, who really knows? But I would rather that they heard whatever it is through my lens and that they can then ask me questions about it. They are then prepared for that to happen or not happen or whatever it is, than for it to be sprung on them in a way that I don't believe is maybe conscious or respectful or the way that I would handle it. And I know you think maybe I say too much.
Yeah, I think when children are young, safety is more important than truth or preparation, because a lot of the things we think might happen don't actually happen. I think children live in a different world to us. We're exposed to government, we're exposed to whatever is going on in the news. Children can live a sheltered life while their nervous system is being developed, while their neural pathways are being developed. They don't need to know what's going on in the real world. I believe our job as parents when the children are young is to protect them from that.
Yeah, so we differ a little bit on that. And I think probably that works out well because I maybe divulge too much, you don't enough. In terms of then the children, staying on the path of the children, do they need to know exactly who you are? So do they need to know your past, or do they only need to know the version of you that is their parent? That's an interesting one, I think.
Again, we differ slightly there. My opinion is that they need to know who I am as a father, especially when they're young. I think there's different stages in childhood.
Yeah, of course.
They need to know that dad's there, dad's safe, dad's present. They need to feel that the safety of that parent.
Yeah.
Probably both parents when the kids are young. Then when the kids are developing into adults and they're finding their own personality and they're going out there in the world, then I've certainly shared more of my experience as a teenager in relationships and relationship with drugs, alcohol, all that type of stuff. And I have been honest with them about that.
Yeah, again, I think truth is more of like an ingrained need in me or something. I believe in telling the truth, however uncomfortable it is. Even when they were little, obviously in an age-appropriate way. You're not going to divulge things that aren't appropriate. But when they've asked me any questions about, some people are like, oh, reproduction, how do you handle it? They get all nervous. I always think, tell the truth. Tell the truth. Because in my mind, I guess the backstory is I want them to trust me. Maybe safety is your paramount value. Maybe trust is really important to me. And trust is intricately linked for me to honesty. And so I want them to know that however uncomfortable the answer they might get to a question, it's truthful.
I know, but just look at the Father Christmas thing and the tooth fairy thing. We tell children lies, right? And to create a certain narrative, an environment, an experience for the children.
I never stuck to it though. The minute there were doubts, I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't think that comes into the truth thing, actually. That's more like...
No, but it's an example of
fantasy
you
world.
saying that trust is more important. I can remember when I told the kids that Father Christmas wasn't real, I felt guilty. There was a
break.
There was an element of, oh, you're not always telling me the truth.
Yeah.
You are pretending to me to create this narrative.
But I think, honestly, that's the only thing I've lied about. And I don't think I lied. I never said, oh, it's real. When they said, is he real? I didn't answer the question, but I tried to make it exciting by leaving red thread and some mud and stuff.
There has to be an element of protection for children. Otherwise, we would give them access to everything. There's a reason why kids don't get phones.
Yeah.
Is because they can't process the information. They don't have the maturity to process certain information. That's a fact, right? So you have to filter something as an adult to protect the children.
I don't know. Maybe that's to do with our childhood wounds. Who knows? Did I trust my parents? Yeah, maybe that was one thing I was lacking. Maybe safety was the thing that you were lacking. So you naturally want to embody what you didn't get or correct what you didn't have.
I think partly safety was one thing I did get, which I cherish that. That prolonging of childhood and that safety in childhood, even though it's balanced with some unsafety as well.
I like to think that my ability to manage the truth now as an adult or question things is based on having the facts, not being shielded from things. So relationships, does one need to be honest in a relationship?
Yeah, I think in terms of the present, it's probably the most important thing. And to be honest with a partner, you have to be honest with yourself. You have to know yourself. You have to not be playing a character. You have to not be this people pleaser or this perfectionist or whatever it is. And I think that's a process. It's the process of this work. Let me talk from myself. I didn't really know who I was. I didn't really know what my truth was. I saw myself through the eyes of other people a lot. If that's you, if you've got that people pleaser thing, if you're playing a role, then that's going to come across in your relationship. You're going to say things you think the other person wants to hear. You're going to do things that the other person wants you to do, potentially. And that's going to lead to resentment. Again, you're probably not going to be honest about that. So you're going to harbor that. You're going to repress that. So first of all, you've got to understand yourself. You've got to be authentic yourself. And then it's really important to bring that into the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously, if you're brought up in an environment where you had to adapt your behavior, you mentioned people pleasing. I had to be a bit of an entertainer, but also the caretaker and also the therapist. If you're having to take on these roles, then it is difficult to then work out who you are. This is a skill that's meant to come when your brain is developing. It's very important between, 0 and 5, or I think it's 0 and 3, that you are focused on yourself. You're finding out what your needs and wants are, what feels good, what doesn't, what do you like, what you don't. If you're outwardly focused on what your parents like and don't like and want and need, then you completely bypass that. It doesn't happen. You have to do it literally in therapy or with a coach because those neural pathways did not develop.
I think if you go up a level, dishonesty in relationship is often part of the trauma bond. It's two people that are either anxious or avoidant or people pleasers or whatever it is that are playing these roles within a relationship. And the role is to receive love or how you receive love or whatever it is.
Or how you reject love. Again, that also depends on your anxious attachment or your avoidant attachment. If you're anxious attachment, you're probably going to come across as needy and fawn and be who that person wants you to be. If you're avoidant attachment, the minute you feel comfortable in that relationship and loved, you're going to reject them. I mean, is honesty even possible? Like you said, it depends on how well you know yourself, and that's a moving target, really. Does one ever know oneself? I don't know. But what you do need to know, which we say every episode, is you have to know how your past affected you.
Yeah.
How it's showing up now, how it's playing out in you now, unconsciously in the patterns that govern your behavior. If you don't know that, then you can't be honest. You're only being honest to the degree that you know yourself, which is not much.
And I think probably most people would say they know themselves and are honest.
Yeah.
But really, how honest are you? How in touch with your intuition and your inner guidance and your purpose and your inner voice are you? Most people are operating from that point of playing a character for somebody, and that comes into your relationship.
So I agree with you. It's really important to be open about your wants and your needs. Often that gets shrouded in secrecy a little bit. I bring in quite a bit of shadow work into my work with women because it is about owning the less savory, should we say, aspects of your character. We all have them. But if they're denied or not seen consciously by you as part of who you are, they're not the whole you, they're part of who you are, then they will govern you. Trauma happens in relationship. Trauma doesn't happen on your own, right? If you're in a bubble, you can't get traumatized. It happens because of the effects of other people's behavior on you and the way that was handled. The same goes for healing. Healing happens in relationship. Exploring your wants and needs, however shameful you might feel they are, or however judged you think you might be, or however rejected you think you might be for it, that's the perfect almost entry point into creating a much more safe relationship. Commit to each other that you're going to try and be kind and that you might get triggered and that that's okay. And then you can talk about that, but that it's like an open table and everything has a place at that table. I know that I found out who I was through my romantic relationships because I didn't let friends in that much.
Yeah, I agree. But I think the journey towards honesty and truth starts with the inner journey. So it starts with, like you said, the shadow, or just being conscious of what your traits are, being conscious of what your adaptive behaviors are. Okay, so my adaptive behavior from childhood is to be a people pleaser. How am I turning up in relationship? Am I considering the other person's needs and then mirroring that to receive love? And if I'm doing that, okay, can I step into the opposite, which is connecting to what my needs are? And then, like you said, slowly starting to introduce those. And the environment and the relationship will dictate how that is accepted. To be honest, within a relationship, you need to have some level of safety and love in that relationship. I've got a client at the moment that has found the truth in himself, but that's not accepted in the relationship. So every time he tries to do that, he gets called defensive. He's even been called like a gaslighter or narcissist, because the old relationship was that he was there to serve the other person.
Right.
And now he's come back and said, well, actually, I've got some needs. He's like, well, you're a narcissist. You've got needs. He's facing a really challenging situation now where he's trying to grow into the relationship, but he's facing a brick wall.
And that's, I guess, what I touched on as well, that you don't know whether you're going to create safety or not, but you have to try. The healing will come or not, but you've got to try and create that safety. And that's how you learn whether that person's right for you or not, essentially.
Exactly. Otherwise, the relationship's not going to evolve. You're just going to stick in that old dynamic.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I think a question for people, listeners, to ask themselves, if you're not sure about whether your childhood was one where you were able to be authentic or not, is number one, how did you get your needs met? By needs, I mean, not just food, shelter. How did you get your emotional needs met? Did you feel comfortable taking a negative feeling like sadness, fear, anger to your parents? If you didn't, you've got a problem. There wasn't that safety for you. There wasn't that honesty. Again, that would be like, okay, well then how did I manage that need? Did I just have to suppress it? Did I have to put on a brave face?
Yeah. I think we've touched on this before, but I think a common childhood experience is like anxious, overwhelmed mother and absent father. And a lot of people just think, yeah, that's a normal childhood. My dad was absent, he was working hard, he had to, and my mum was overwhelmed and anxious. But in that situation, you've got one of your parents who has overwhelming emotions and maybe can't hold space for your emotions. So that's when you get attuned to making somebody else happy before your emotions can be met. And then the absent part is, I need to connect with them on their level and make them happy and do what they want to do to get attention. And both of those create this external mechanism of how you get your needs met.
And express that to someone else.
First, it's about connection. Most people don't even know what they want.
No.
We've worked with a couple, and one of the man that I worked with, he's just finding that out in his late 30s. You don't have to go to work anymore. You've got a free diary next week. And he's like, I've got no idea what I would do. I've got no idea what makes me happy.
Yeah. In a way, that's exciting, right? You could see that as like, great.
It is for him now because he's
adventure.
started doing it and he's absolutely loving it. And actually, the example of that, you said to me the other day that their relationship is great. They're getting on really well. And part of that is the result of, obviously, the work you're doing with her. And part of that is him knowing himself. Their relationship is better because he knows what he wants and he knows what his truth is and he's satisfying that need.
And that is attractive.
Outside of the relationship and inside of the relationship. So he's not reliant on her to satisfy his needs or the family to get his identity. He's actually creating that and living that. And then he comes back into the house a lot more happy, fulfilled, present, and able to then create a better relationship, a better connection.
So let's talk about how that honesty translates or doesn't to all areas of your life. You mentioned that you have someone who's now being honest with themselves and with their partner, perhaps with their children, but not at work. I think that's quite a common one.
Yeah.
Feeling like again, it's the same thing. You're just projecting the dynamic that you had with your parents onto your bosses. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same thing. Am I going to get rejected? Am I going to get judged? Am I going to jeopardize my pay, my status, my role, my perks? Fill the blank.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people find that transition period difficult. Like if you do the work, you're committing to changing yourself, and that might mean changing every aspect of your life, which might be scary for people. But there becomes a point in the transition where, okay, I know myself, I love myself, I'm tapped into what my needs are. And then I don't know whether it's more difficult or easier to do that within relationship. I guess if you're in a good relationship where you're both growing, you can do that, make that change within relationship. But then you might find that those patterns are continuing outside. You might lose friends.
Yeah.
You might get new friends, but also at work. It's like, oh my God, I'm playing this role. I'm this people pleaser at work. Unless you change that, you're in exactly the same position. You get exactly the same pain.
But I think it's important to talk about the horse coming before the cart, not the other way around. Like when you said people often change as a result of this work, I want to address that because some people go, oh, I'm scared. I'm scared of doing the work because I might change. My life might change. Yes, your life may or may not change. Often it will to a certain degree. However, it only changes because you can't do life how you were doing it before. You're not the same person who's making the change. Therefore, it's not scary. If you are exactly the same person being asked to change your job, find a new partner, move house, it's like, oh my God, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah, but that's the you that hasn't done the work yet. When you've done the work and you feel aligned, confident, grounded, present, embodied, safe, then things are going to show up that aren't in alignment with that. And then it's not difficult. Then it's like, I can't do this anymore. I need something else. And that is exciting. You bring on the changes because you are demanding more of life. You're demanding of the people that you relate to. You're demanding more depth in your connections. You're demanding more honesty. Let's bring it back to the theme of today.
I think it's a great point. I think because we attract what our vibration is.
Yeah.
And everything in our life before we do the work is a reflection of the good and bad, that the energy that we're putting out there. Most of my clients are scared at some point, partly because, like you said, they're fearful of making those decisions from the place that they're at, which isn't relevant because you change. And secondly, they're partly scared of what's on the other side. Who am I if I'm not this people pleaser? Because often it benefits them in some way, especially with our clients. They're quite high functioning people. So the people pleaser works in an office environment.
Who am I without this wound?
Yeah.
Who am I without this identity? What's that Marianne Williamson quote? We're not scared of our own failure, or we're more scared of our potential, our power, than we are of failure, actually. And that's what we're talking about, right? Because then you can't offload it to anyone else. You can't blame anyone else. You can't hide behind anyone else. It's like, well, I now have to take full accountability for what happens because I'm creating it. And of course that's scary. Everyone feels that way. But when you're in that place of embodiment, it's not scary. It's natural.
Well, it's very scary because the people pleaser was born out of a rejection wound to start with. So to become a people pleaser, you have to have been rejected or perceive that you're rejected for being yourself. The net result of healing is you be yourself, which you were originally rejected for.
Yeah.
So that's a really scary prospect for a lot of people.
Only if you haven't done the work.
Yeah, at the start of the journey, it's very scary.
In terms of how can people be more authentic? How can they bring more honesty to how they show up in various parts of their life? It's not a head decision. Yeah, sure, you can go into work thinking, right, do you know what? I'm going to introduce a little bit more of what my wants and needs are, or what I like doing outside of work. I'm going to share more of who I know that I am. Yes. But the rest of it is, like we often say, energetic.
I think for me, it's definitely a heart decision, but actions speak louder than words at that point in the process. So you can go through the healing process and tell your inner child that it's safe to be you and that he's loved or they are loved and accepted, and they can feel that. But then if you go and spend the next 6 months acting the same way as you were before, and I've seen both elements, then you're basically telling that part of you that it's not safe to be yourself. So you have to take action.
So the only bit we haven't talked about that we said we'd mention is relationships and how relevant it is to be honest, truthful about your past or not. I've met people who say that honesty is destructive. That's their view on honesty, which like shook me to my core because I couldn't be further from that. But then, like I said, I don't mind destruction. I see destruction as healthy if what you're destroying is unhealthy. But should you bring truth out in dynamics where it perhaps hasn't been seen before? Is that necessary? I believe yes. I think that's important for that person to know you fully. There's an element of timing. Don't get me wrong. You can't lay it all out on a plate.
On the second date.
I knew you were going to say that.
You told me you'd been divorced on our second date, and I think that's a good example, actually, because I wasn't happy about it. It did affect the way I felt about you, but it was going to come out at some point in time. So why not bring it out on the second date?
Well, I wasn't going to do it on the first date. I mean, now I think back, I'm like, oh my God, it's so irrelevant. But then that's from my perspective. And I think that is where I'm tactless, or other people can perceive me as tactless, because I'm like, to me, it's not important. It doesn't change anything. And other people that are on the receiving end of my truth or whatever I feel I need to divulge are like, whoa, because maybe it affects them differently. I'm not very good at judging that, because I believe that any disruption that happens is a good thing and we need to work through it together. But second date, I thought the sooner the better. I mean, how many, I guess I'm going on TV shows now. How many TV shows have you seen where the person that has something to say and doesn't say it gets into more and more and more of a pickle because now the timing's not right, and oh shit, the time's going past and now I'm living a lie. And back to what I said earlier, I really value trust. Me telling you at that second date something that I felt you should know, hopefully had the effect that I wanted, which was I'm honest.
Yeah.
I'm trustworthy. So I'm not going to hide anything. You can trust me and be open with me, which I think you really needed.
Yeah, I think you're right. Again, I think we've learned from each other and probably adapted more of the other person's. I'm definitely more authentic and honest than when I met you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. And you're maybe a bit more strategic and political.
No, I am. I definitely am. I think that's also age.
Yeah.
So yeah, going back to the question, I think it is important to bring your past up when relevant in an appropriate way. If you have the stomach to and the courage to, you can be honest about the things you are still ashamed of.
Yeah, my line is that it's not that relevant. The particular details or things you've done that you're ashamed of or wouldn't do again that you've learnt from, I don't particularly think they're relevant for a relationship.
I think they are.
Because you've changed, you've evolved. Like a lot of people use other people. They're not going to go into a relationship and say, this is what I do.
Oh, in the past, I used to use people. You've told me about people you've used.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not great. But I was really glad that you told me. Yeah. And you've moved on. You don't do that anymore. So you've learned. That can only serve as the platform for deeper connection.
Yeah. But that was probably 5 or 10 years into the relationship.
So maybe that's something we can extrapolate for the listeners. If you're scared of bringing something out because you're worried about it jeopardizing what you have or rocking the boat or losing something that you now have, I would challenge you, invite you to really explore that fear. What is that fear of judgment? What do you feel you're losing? Because you can't lose anything that's you. You are you. Anything that is at risk of being lost is not the authentic you. It's the false identity that you've been carrying all this time for whatever reason. If you think truth is destructive, in what way? What's going to be destroyed that you can't repair from a much healthier, more authentic, meaningful base?
Yeah. I go back to my first point, which is similar to yours in that I don't think anything bad comes from the truth in the long term. I've seen people that don't speak the truth to not rock the boat, and it leads to long-term unhappiness. But also just one final point that I would make on this from my point of view is that the truth can change sometimes. I'll often go through a process myself while I'll have some insight or I'll do a bit of work on myself, and then that'll be reflected in our relationship. We've been together for nearly 20 years. And then I'll think, that reflects badly on you. For example, you could talk about trauma bonds. This is quite a common one in a relationship. Okay, we got together because we had a trauma bond, partly. And then people can think, well, if I got together with somebody because of a trauma bond, that's not authentic. Maybe I shouldn't be with that person, right? And that's certainly a thought that I've had in our relationship. And if I'd have told you that and acted on that point in time,
I knew you felt that.
then
You
that
did
could
make
have
it
caused conflict. Yeah, but if I'd have made a decision that is my truth, I need to divorce this woman, then that would have been the wrong decision. But actually sitting with it for a week on my own, I processed it myself and then kind of came out with another truth 3 days later or a week later. So sometimes you have got to process some things yourself. You have got to work some things out yourself
Definitely.
before you come out.
I don't think I'm talking about sharing honestly as in dumping. You're processing everything
It's not
yourself.
necessarily dumping. It can be your truth one day, and then
Right.
you can have a different truth
Yes.
a few days later. Sometimes you've got to do
Yeah.
a little bit of introspection and working. And also see your responsibility in that thing. Like sometimes you might externalize the responsibility into actually that's your fault. And then with a bit of time, you see the part you played in it.
I think if you can go through life with a mantra, what is this opportunity, experience, challenge, person teaching me? Then you never blame anyone else. You are the creator of your own reality. I brought that up with one of my clients who's finding she's being really triggered by one of her children. It's like, what is he teaching you? It just reframes things. One last point for me is to be aware of when you're externalizing truth. A bit similar to what you were saying about your truth and how that can shift. It can shift, and it's important to always be aware of what your truth is in any given moment. It's not necessarily some black and white thing out there, which does maybe sound a little bit theoretical. So maybe I'll give an example. So one of our children was asked a question in an interview, which was, if you heard about or witnessed rule breaking in a friend, would you tell the teacher or not? Would you tell a figure of authority? And this was not in a philosophy lesson. This was not in a psychology lesson. This was literally asking them whether they were suitable to go on a trip, which I think is quite a tricky question for a child. Anyway, my child really impressed me because they said, well, first of all, before judging and before telling anyone, I would ask why they did it. So why my friend broke a rule. And secondly, if I agreed with my friend on why they broke it, or I understood, or it made sense, or it seemed reasonable to me, then I wouldn't do anything. If it didn't, then I might tell someone, which I thought was a really good example of feeling into what feels right in the moment to you, what feels in alignment with you. Because you could say, oh, well, the truth is, you must tell the truth. You must tell someone when someone else is breaking the rule. Basically, you need to be a snitch, which a child's never going to be. So it's just a stupid question. But it's not about just following a rule. It's more nuanced than that. Values shouldn't be followed blindly, especially when they're external. It is about your truth and what feels right in that moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think authenticity and honesty are two different things. And I think authenticity is like an internal version of truth. And honesty can often be an external value, right? And I believe, certainly in the people that I've met, is you only need an external value of honesty when you're not authentic. It's like the people that I've met that say they're honest, That's one of my things. I'm honest. Often because they're not authentic and not honest. So they have to put it out there that they're honest. They have to hang this external value out there because they don't know who they are. They're not being authentic, and often they're not being honest. We're only here for one reason, and that is to live an authentic experience, being ourselves. Otherwise, we won't be here. And part of that is about knowing the truth and expressing the truth in relationship and then to the universe and everyone we meet, everyone we speak to, and also putting out that true vibration which attracts a life in alignment with ourselves.
Yeah. So take it or leave it. We'd love to know what you think. Is honesty something that you value, that you want to do more of? Is it safe? Is it trustworthy? We'd love to know your comments.
If what we discussed was helpful, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. For more of the same, check out my social media, The Inner Child Healing Expert, or to work with me, go to laviniabrown.com.
You can find me on andrewlynn.net or Life Coach for Dads on Instagram. We work with both individuals and couples. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, please reach out. Thanks for listening.